Talk about some ideas in this book that fly in the face of conservative orthodoxy, things that where your party right now would have a hard time swallowing what you want to do.
Well, we're having a problem with immigration reform, for example, and I talk at great length about what I think immigration reform ought to look like. It's very important that we reform our immigration laws. It's important for national security, but it's also important for our economy, particularly with baby boomers retiring. I talk about upward mobility and a better strategy for fighting poverty. I've laid out a list of exhaustive plans on how to rethink our approach to fighting poverty and producing upward mobility. I also talk about how our party needs to reform itself to be a more inclusive party and to be more competitive with non-traditional voters, which I think is absolutely essential going forward.
And why do you think on those three things that the bulk of the party is not where you are?
Well, I'd like to think as leaders we can bring the party to these places. You know, look, are you a follower or a leader? I'd rather be a leader. And a leader says, this is what we ought to be doing different than what we're doing now. If everything was great, we would have won this last presidential election. Everything isn't great. We didn't read his book. I mean, you could write of half of this book. We've got to fix some problems. We need to be clear about the problems we have in our party so that we can fix these things and give people a real honest idea of what we think we ought to do. And I think what this basically spells out is a vision that a majority of Americans, no matter their background, no matter who they are or where they come from, can support. And that, to me, is the kind of an election we ought to have. And that's the sort of thing I'm pushing here, which is an agenda of solutions to get us back on the right track.
Well, let's stay on immigration then for a second. You know, there's two groups of people who are here illegally. Children who were brought here. You have one set of ideas for them, and that's less controversial than the party. But what you lay out in the book on what should be done with the 12 million or so, your running mate last time, Mitt Romney, was for self-deportation. He wanted them to leave. You don't want them to leave. You want to give them basically a path to legalization.
Not citizenship.
But legalization and maybe citizenship over time.
Yeah, they can earn it,
right.
But they have to get the back of the line so that you always preference the legal immigrant who did everything right from the get-go.
Sure. You've got every caveat in there to try to play, I think,
no, I just think these are the right policies.
No, I understand. But you've got the caveat. You want the border secure first. You want that independently verified. But again, you are stepping out different from a lot of people in your party and saying those 12 million people, if they do a series of things, can stay here legally forever, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
They can always get a work permit that's renewed, so indefinitely.
Would you like to see Republican candidates run on that in this election cycle?
I'm putting it right here in my book. I've been saying this for a number of years.
You'd urge the talk radio hosts who support your party, you'd urge the candidates in your party, the leadership of your party, you'd urge everyone to be for a policy that says those 12 million people, if they do a series of things, can stay here.
This is what I think we should do. Otherwise, I wouldn't have put it in my book, which is here's a way to put people on probation so that they earn their ability to stay in this country legally, so that they get right with the law and come out of the shadows and earn a good place to do this. And I think it would actually get us good reforms, like welfare reforms, by doing it this right way. And it would also leverage the border security that we need and the interior enforcement that we need. It's not a trust but verify. It's a verify that the security provisions are in place and then trust and move forward with legal immigration reform. Look, Mark, we've got big problems in this country. And we're not going to solve them if we just keep doing this to each other. So what I'm trying to say is here are constructive solutions to some of the intractable problems we have in this political paralyzed environment we're in. That is what leaders ought to do. And yes, sometimes when you put new ideas out there, they're a little controversial, but you never get anything done if you don't do that. That's the story of my life.